What is up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and I'm back from an accidental break. Unfortunately, I had some PC problems. I had a video that was basically about 80% of the way done, and my PC just crapped out on me. Silver linings though, I'm trying to make the best of it. I finally justified. It was kind of the thing that I needed to justify getting a brand new PC, but it takes a little bit to get all that stuff up and running. So I did have to take a little bit of a break, but I'm excited to be back. Not only excited to have a new PC, but this particular video is one that I kind of look forward to every year, and that is the Game Awards nominations. So we finally got those last week, and I want to talk about them. So without further ado, let's rock. I do want to mention real quick, I want to make this crystal clear. The Game Awards are not serious. Honestly, they don't seem to actually even care about the awards that they're giving out. They really just kind of use it as an excuse to pimp out the games that are about to come out. It's kind of this mini E3, so to speak. So when we have this discussion, it's just kind of an excuse for us to talk about these games. If you liked a game that I didn't particularly like, or vice versa, or maybe there was a game that I didn't really talk about because I hadn't played it or whatever, you could still love that game. I'm just some idiot on the internet giving his 2 cents. So this isn't serious. It's just a way, an excuse to talk about these games, some of which I've already talked about either in a review or first impressions or whatever on this channel already. But there are a lot of games that I play throughout the year that I don't get a chance to talk about, and I really like this particular video to kind of give me an excuse to talk about those games. For example, it's not nominated that I'm aware of unless I missed something, but I'm currently chipping away on Stalker 2 on my brand new PC, and that's not a game I plan on talking about outside of this right here on this channel. So there are a lot of games that I play that I don't get a chance to talk about, so I kind of use this as an excuse to talk about those games. But again, it's not serious. Don't get too upset. I do like to hear your opinions in the comments down below, but let's just be civil. This isn't serious. And as you can see, there are a ton of categories. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, mostly because it would be like a 2-hour video and nobody wants to watch that. But more importantly, it's because I just don't know all of these categories by heart. And that's what I think makes gaming great. As much as I play, and I play a ton of video games, I haven't played all these games. There are just genres of video games that just aren't my thing. I especially don't really like esports. I love that it's a thing, but I don't watch any esports. I watch some competitive Magic, but that's not really esports. So I wouldn't really know anything about those categories, and I don't really watch other content creators in the gaming space. So again, I just don't know those categories. So I'm not gonna waste your time and vote on those categories. I do also want to mention that I'm going to be voting as who I want to win. There are going to be a couple of categories where I might mention, oh, here's who I want to win, but I think it's going to be this particular game that wins it. But I am going to be voting if I were the one choosing, this is who should get the award. And I really wish I could start off with a bang, with a category that I had played all the games, that I could break down all my thoughts, all that good stuff. But I'm going to start with the best multiplayer game. And honestly, the only game that I've played is Black Ops 6. And that was actually the video I had recorded a Black Ops 6 campaign review. And that's what I was putting together when my PC shit the bed. So unfortunately, that video will never come out. So I'll kind of do it here. I really liked Black Ops 6. Black Ops has always had the reputation of telling weird stories in the campaign, and I thought that they really knocked it out of the park with this particular campaign. It was way better than the last campaign we got, which isn't saying much because that campaign was just an afterthought. It felt like they were just kind of putting one out there, just put one out there, so that was disappointing. But Black Ops 6 was way better. There was a lot of cool missions. They actually brought in a zombies mission into into the campaign. I've always been a big Nazi zombie guy. That was a weird thing to say. Probably could have phrased it a little bit differently, but I've always really enjoyed that game mode, and I'm really enjoying it in Black Ops 6 as well. So the campaign was really cool. The zombies, I don't know if they call it Nazi zombies anymore, but yeah, so that's really cool. I haven't touched a ton of the multiplayer, so I guess I really shouldn't give it best multiplayer, but I do play a lot of zombies, and that's technically multiplayer, and that's a lot of fun. I know a lot of people, and this is probably going to be one of those categories I just mentioned where I think Helldivers 2 will actually win, but my vote's going to be Black Ops 6. Unfortunately, I have not played Helldivers 2. I had a couple of buddies that when this game blew up, they were obsessed with it. It was insane. They talked about it all the time, and they really kind of tried to bully me or peer pressure me into playing it, and I just never got into it because it's just not the type of game that I like to play. And it looked awesome. It's just, again, not the type of game that I wanted to play. Also, I am also very self-conscious about kind of when I don't jump on a game like that right away and it explodes, and then I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball and I just never want to catch up. And I know I shouldn't care, but I'm very self-conscious about that. So the more I didn't play it, the less likely I was going to play it. So my vote, again, is the only game that I've played, and that is Black Ops 6. And I'm gonna kind of actually break my own rules with this next category, best sports / racing, because I actually haven't played any of these games. So you would think, okay, well, you just said you're gonna skip the ones that you haven't played any of the games, but I do want to mention, this is gonna be a quick rant, but I am a pretty big sports fan. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is a little hoarse because literally the Bears just lost another game. They fought back and they brought it to overtime, and then they did Bears things and lost it in a heartbreaker. And so I was yelling at the screen. So I am a big sports fan, and I do really like sports video games, mostly Madden and now college football games. They're finally back. We finally have a college football game. It's the first time since NCAA football 14, and it was such a huge deal, and it made a ton of money. I know that doesn't really matter as far as this is concerned, and it's a really good game. I had some issues. I did put out a review of the Road to Glory mode for college football 25, and I really enjoyed it. And there were some issues that I had. They feel like they've cleaned it up since then, but the fact that it wasn't nominated, it feels like it was just an absolute home run that they could have nominated. They didn't have to give it to him. I probably would have been pretty upset if they didn't give it to him, but the fact that it wasn't even nominated is absolutely ridiculous. So I'll be quick with best family. This is actually a genre that I don't want to say embarrassingly, because I like what I like, but I do play a lot of these games. I'm a big Zelda, Mario fan. My wife loves those games and we really connect. She's not a huge gamer, but there's like one thing that I know she loves. And if there's a Zelda game that comes out, or if there's a Mario game that comes out, we typically play it together. And it's a lot of fun. It's like the one gaming thing that I can get her to do. And so of course I played Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom. I played it for her at times because she's not great at boss battles, and we bond over that kind of stuff. And so I've really enjoyed that game, but this is definitely another category where I'm gonna vote for Echoes of Wisdom because I think it's a really good game. And this kind of goes back to like when the Oscars nominate a animated movie for Best Picture, but it's also nominated for Best Animated Feature. It's gonna win. It's gonna win animated feature because it's the only one that's nominated for best picture, and that's the same for this particular category. Astrobot, which I loved the little tutorial thing that they put in the PlayStation 5 when that first came out. That was really fun, but it's only a couple hours. You don't really get a whole lot. So I was interested in this game, but I never got around to it. And people lost their shit for this game, and I thought it was kind of a prank because I was like, oh, the little tutorial thing, that they made an actual game out of that. But people really liked like it. I'm not shitting on it because I haven't played it, but it just kind of seemed a little silly to me. But apparently it's really, really good because it was nominated for Game of the Year. So obviously it's gonna win Best Family because it's the only family game that was nominated. But again, going off what I said earlier, I'm going to vote for Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom because it's the best family game that I have played, but it's gonna be Astro Bot for sure. All right, so moving on to Best RPG. I know I'm gonna ruffle some feathers with this. I know people are upset because it's a DLC, but Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is on a whole different level. I mean, From Software has always done DLCs great, but it feels like they outdid themselves with this DLC. Shadow of the Erdtree is essentially a different studio's full game. That DLC absolutely rocked. I know that some people are arguing that it shouldn't be nominated because you have to play so much of the original game. You have to beat an optional boss to even get the ability to play this. So even if you buy it, you can't necessarily just jump in if you hadn't beaten that optional boss in the base game. So I get that argument, but it's so awesome. I know people were a little upset that it was too difficult. I didn't think it was that difficult. Like, I mean, it was difficult because Elden Ring is difficult, but I think that the game gave you enough tools and you should be able to beat the game. Like, the final boss is insanely difficult, but if you follow the hints and you're paying attention to what the game is trying to tell you, you should be fine with that game. Especially if you made it that far in the base game, you should be able to handle the DLC no problem. So that's going to be my vote, and I know that that's going to rub some people the wrong way because it is a DLC, but I absolutely love this game. I got insanely obsessed with Elden Ring before this DLC came out. I replayed the game. I probably put anywhere from 200 to 300 hours into it. I kind of played an all-nighter to beat the boss, the optional boss, to get to the DLC, just because I was really struggling with it. But I loved this game this year. I mean, I loved it when it came out, but like, I got obsessed all over again with this game based on this DLC. And I have officially, not that anyone cares, but I have officially put Elden Ring in my top 10 video games of all time. And a lot of that has to do with me getting obsessed with it all over again because I wanted to replay it for the DLC. So moving on to Best Action Adventure. This is actually a category I played a decent amount of the games in this category. I've only not played Astro Bot, which we talked about earlier. Again, this is the same thing where this is the only game in this category that's also nominated for Game of the Year. So it's obviously gonna win, but I haven't played it. And I haven't played Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. My buddy, who is also my co-host on my podcast, The Nerd You're Looking For, he did talk about it on a past episode of the podcast. He was a pretty big fan of it. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. Some person that you probably have never heard of before really like this game, but I personally have not played it. I've played Silent Hill 2, which I just put out a video for not too long ago. It was actually, I think, the last video I put out because, again, I had to take a break. Star Wars Outlaws, which I was not a huge fan of. I did really like the Star Wars in Star Wars Outlaws. Like, it really felt like they did the Star Wars really well in that game, but overall it had a lot of issues. I especially didn't like the force stealth missions early on in the game, and we'll get to this later, I did really like the performance capture and the performances themselves. I thought that the game looks beautiful, and there was some stuff that was really fun in the game. So I get why it's nominated, but I mean, for me, it's not anywhere close to Silent Hill 2. And I think I probably liked Echoes of Wisdom a little bit better as well. I did really dig that game, especially that you get to play as Zelda. I thought was dope. And just the way that she's not really a fighter and she's just kind of creating these echoes, I think is really fun. So I like that game. So out of the three games that I've played, Silent Hill 2, Star Wars Outlaws, and Echoes of Wisdom, I would give it to Silent Hill 2, and then I would go Echoes of Wisdom, and then I'd go Outlaws. So I'm obviously going to vote for Silent Hill 2. It would honestly be my game of the year, but we'll get to my actual vote for game of the year because unfortunately Silent Hill 2 was not nominated. Moving on to best action game, there's 2 games from this category that I've played, and it's a pretty easy choice for me. That is Black Myth Wukong and then Black Ops 6. I've already done my Black Ops 6 spiel, but I haven't really talked that much about Black Myth, and obviously that's going to come up later as well in other categories. I put out a whole video on how much I really enjoyed Black Myth. It's not a perfect game by any means, but it's weird, and again, I really got obsessed with Elden Ring. I've been getting more and more obsessed with the Soulsborne types of games. Like, I really like that style. Like, we got a good one in Lies of P last year, and I've just really enjoyed that this genre has exploded in the last 5-6 years. I've always kind of stayed away from them because I've always heard that they're so difficult, and I kind of have a temper problem. Again, the Bears game spent the whole time yelling at the screen, so I definitely have a bit of an anger management issue. So I've always kind of stayed away from games that were supposedly super difficult, but I've really enjoyed kind of getting into the genre in the last 5-6 years, and I thought Black Myth was one of the best Soulsborne games that wasn't actually a From Software Soulsborne game that I've ever played. It's really unique and cool. The boss battles are fun. There is a lot of them. It feels like they're not as important as they are in a real Soulsborne game, just because you would literally fight a boss and then it feels like you would go 20 steps and then you fight another boss, and it just kind of, some of them kind of blend together because of that. There's so many like these little mini bosses, but the big bosses are always really fun, and I really enjoyed this game. So Black Ops is fine. It was a really good Call of Duty game, but as far as if you're putting it in a category with other games that I like Black Myth, it's gonna lose out pretty much every time. So I'm gonna go Black Myth Wukong for best action game. All right, we're gonna skip all the way to best performance. We're kind of getting closer to the big categories, and I really wanted to talk about this one, mostly because I wanted to pat myself on the back, because one of the things that I mentioned in my Star Wars Outlaws review was I loved the performance from Humberly Gonzalez. She was a big reason why I connected to that character in that game. Yes, there was a lot of issues with that game, and I mentioned it, and I mentioned a little bit of it earlier in this particular video. But one of the things I really liked was her performance. And I kind of wanted to toot my own horn because I didn't hear a lot of people talking about her performance after that game came out, because everybody was just kind of shitting on that game and nobody was really talking about a lot of the little things that I liked about that game. And so I definitely wanted to toot my own horn. However, she wouldn't be my vote. Luke Roberts also is not going to be my vote. I kind of worded that weird, so I was kind of like leaning you into thinking that he was going to be my vote as well. But he played the main character in Silent Hill 2. I thought he did a great job. I really liked that game, and his performance was great. However, nobody was anywhere close to Melina Juergens in Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. Her performance was out of this world. It's probably the best looking video game I've ever seen in my life. It's one of those games where, and I think I mentioned this in the video that I did for this game, you always see those trailers and they look so cool, and then you actually play the game and the game looks like shit. This is one of the rare times where the trailer looked exactly like the game. Like, it felt like you were playing a video game trailer, and it blew me away how good looking this game was. And of course, her performance had a lot to do with that. So she's actually going to be my vote for best performance in a video game, even though this category is pretty good. It's pretty stacked. All right, so I'll be pretty quick with best audio design. I really liked Hellblade 2's audio design, but Silent Hill 2 for me has to be the vote. I talked about this in the video, but horror is really about the tension, and the best way to wrap up the tension is the sound. And I think that they do such a phenomenal job of that in Silent Hill 2. So I'm gonna vote for Silent Hill 2 for best audio design. All right, so moving on to art direction. I really liked Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I know I've already kind of done that rant, so you might be surprised, but I'm actually gonna pick Black Myth Wukong on this. I just think Shadow of the Erdtree and Elden Ring and as a whole looks really cool, and there's a lot of really cool bosses. I don't know, maybe it's just because I had played Elden Ring when it came out, so I knew that style. So when I played Shadow of the Erdtree, it just kind of made sense that it looked like the base game, and the base game looks cool. But I was just more blown away by Black Myth Wukong, just the style and the uniqueness to it. And so that's why I want to give it best art direction. All right, so best narrative. I've actually only played 2 of these games, Hellblade 2, and then of course Silent Hill 2. As much as I liked Hellblade 2 and it was a cool story, I actually think that I connected with the original game way more than I connected with the sequel. And I know Silent Hill 2 is a remake, but I never actually played the original game, so the remake was my first experience with Silent Hill 2, and I had heard, my expectations going in was that Silent Hill 2 had one of the best video game stories of all time, and I was pretty cautious about that about halfway through that game, because I was like, really? This story? Like, did they change a lot? Did they make it worse? Because I really wasn't feeling the story until that second half of the game, and that's when they start to really peel back the layers. It's definitely a slow burn for sure with the story of Silent Hill 2, but once it hits hard. It's insane. So I definitely understand why people talk about it as one of the best video game stories of all time. So it's gonna be my pick. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these other games won, but I've not actually played them, so I can't speak to that. I'm really struggling with best game direction, and mostly because I'm getting in my own head about the description of game direction, and I hit my mic, I apologize for that, but it says awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. So the only 2 games that I've played, which shouldn't come as a shock because I've already talked about them, is Black Myth Wukong and Shadow of the Erdtree. Shadow of the Erdtree is a DLC. So yes, it has a great creative vision, but it's the creative vision of the game that it's a DLC for, and it doesn't really innovate because, again, it's a DLC. So as much as I loved that game, and Elden Ring is a great game and it's one of my favorite games of all time, I feel like it shouldn't be nominated for best game direction. Again, maybe I'm just bumping up against the description, but it's their description. So if they're to blame, then so I'm really struggling with best game direction. It's mostly because I'm an idiot and I'm just getting in my own head about the description, but it's awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. So the only 2 games I've played nominated for this category is Black Myth and Shadow of the Erdtree. Shadow of the Erdtree, as much as I love Elden Ring, and I absolutely love it, again, it's one of my favorite games of all time, Shadow of the Erdtree, as much as it is a phenomenal DLC, and it is a DLC that most studios would consider a full game, it is still technically a DLC. It is still riding the coattails, and that might be too negative. I don't mean it that negative, but it is still kind of piggybacking off of Elden Ring. So I feel like the creative vision and innovation is all just Elden Ring, and they're kind of piggybacking off of that. Now, there were differences in the DLC, and I definitely liked the DLC quite a lot. We'll get to that here in a second. But I don't feel like it should get best game direction based off of their own description. Again, maybe I'm just an idiot and getting in my own head about it, but I feel like it can't be Shadow of the Erdtree. But at the same time, Black Myth is a Soulsborne game. It wants to be, it's that type of style. And that's not necessarily innovation. Now, I will say that it has outstanding creative vision. Like, they really nailed the style of this game, and that's why I'm going to vote for it. But it does kind of, again, kind of piggybacking off of games that have come before it. So I'm going to vote for Black Myth Wukong, but I really struggled voting for this category. 'Cause I just got really in my head about what best game direction meant, but I also only played 2 of the games, so I also struggled because of that. All right, so we're finally here. Let's talk about Game of the Year. And unfortunately, it's going to be a little anticlimactic. I actually considered starting with this category just because, again, I've only played 2 of these games, unfortunately. I was really nervous going into this video because I was like, man, I'm not going to feel like I'm really a gamer because they nominated 6 games and I only played 2 of them, and I'm making this whole video and I kind of feel like an imposter. But I do play a lot of games, as you can see in my channel. I review a lot of games, but I just happen to not play any of the other games. I only played Black Myth and Shadow of the Erdtree, and man, I'm struggling with this one, much like the game direction one. Not because I'm in my own head about the description. It's really just I kind of sat down and didn't really think of any of my thoughts. I just kind of wanted to kind of go off the cuff. Maybe you like that. Maybe you think that I probably should have prepped some of this stuff. I don't know, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, am I really gonna give a DLC my Game of the Year? Because I am definitely struggling with that. As much as I really like Black Myth, and I definitely did, I've talked about liking that game quite a lot. It has a really unique style to it. I think that they nailed everything that they were trying to do with that game. I just love Elden Ring so much, and I haven't played any of the other games, so I think that's going to be my vote. Now, I will preface this by saying, and it's a remake, so maybe that's why they didn't nominate it, but I think I haven't thought through my top 5 games of the year. I definitely will put that video out in a couple of months, probably, so end of December, early January, so I guess not technically a couple of months, but I haven't really thought through that yet, so I don't know what ultimately will be my #1 game or my Game of the Year or whatever. But I think Silent Hill 2 remake would probably be either 1 or 2 on that list. I haven't decided if I'm going to put Shadow of the Erdtree. They decided that they were going to nominate it, so I'm talking about it here. But I don't know if I want to put a DLC on my list. Nobody cares. I'm just, again, getting in my own head about it. But I think I'm gonna vote for it for this category. But Black Myth it's really close. I definitely feel like I need to play Astro though, because it's nominated in a bunch of categories, and I do like platformers, and so it does feel like it might be right up my alley. But I am reluctantly going to vote for a DLC for Game of the Year. I'm definitely curious why they nominated a DLC but they didn't nominate a remake. I don't know. All right, there you have it. Those are my 2 cents for all of the categories I thought were relevant for the Game Awards. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Let me know how wrong I was, what games I mentioned I hadn't played yet that you think I really should play. I was a little nervous to even do this video because there are always going to be Game Award categories that I'm just like, nope, haven't played any of those. But this year felt especially bad, where I was just like, oh man, I've only played a couple of those. It felt like it was a weird year for nominations. And I felt like Silent Hill 2 should have been nominated. I felt like if you're going to nominate a DLC, then Hades 2 should have gotten nominated for something, because I thought that game was amazing. Yes, it's in early access, but I feel like it still should have been nominated if you're going to nominate a DLC. Again, I'm not shitting on Shadow of the Erdtree. It's amazing. I was pretty reluctant. It felt gross nominating, or I guess voting for it for Game of the Year. But again, I probably would have voted for Silent Hill 2 if it was nominated, but it wasn't. So I definitely think that 2024 didn't have that amazing game. I think it had a lot of really, really good games, but it didn't really have that amazing, great game, like a generation's favorite game of all time. Like, I feel like we've been getting a lot of those games recently. We kind of got it last year with Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring a few years ago. So we've been getting really amazing games, at least 1 or 2 a year. It feels like 2024 is the first year that we haven't gotten one of those games. Now, one of the games I haven't played maybe is one of those games for you. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, which you probably did if you made it this far, smash that like button, as the kids say. Definitely consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. That way you're notified every time I post a video. I do try, even though I haven't in a while, I do try to post weekly gaming related content, especially towards the end of the year, because I'm going to be doing a lot of my gaming resolutions and top 5 video games of the year, those types of videos towards the end of the year. So definitely make sure you subscribe and ding that bell. But until next video, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy. And we were just talking, and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?